Wow, in person.
Yeah.
Meeting, so calling us to order. And I have a real flag, not that I didn't in Mike's office, but I have a real flag.
It's a real flag, it's just small.
I know, yeah. So if everyone would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God, that just felt fun today.
Yeah.
Miss Abigail, roll call, please.
Dilkins,
Here.
Gregg,
Here.
Bunce,
Here.
Bosher,
Here.
Bauman,
Here.
Bent,
Here.
and Putman.
Here. Thank you. Hopefully everyone had a chance here to look at this evening's agenda here for July 26, 2021.
Mhm.
I just need an approval of that from anyone.
So moved. Support.
Mr. Bunce and Mayor.
Actually, it was Bosher.
Oh, Bob. Oh, sorry.
We'll let you take credit for
I
it.
just heard verbiage and I.
John. I know it's been a long time.
There you go.
And I didn't look, so I just heard a voice, and I shouldn't assume things, right? Sorry, roll.
All right. Gregg,
Yes.
Bosher,
Yes.
Bunce,
Yes.
Bent,
Yes.
Bauman,
Yes.
Dilkins,
Yes.
and Putman.
Yes. Okay, hopefully everyone looked at the Planning Commission June 28, 2021 meeting minutes. Unlike the in-ground pool that Joe caught.
Underground.
Underground, yeah.
Mhm.
There's it's small thing, I don't even think it really matters, but I'm on my last page, under I, it says Wallace presented motion to approve lot split of property owned by applicant, or by Wexford Osceola Habitat, 2 on Linden Street. That just sounded like it didn't flow right to me. 2 on, that's what it says. What am I missing? That flows right?
It
On
would have if
to?
you wouldn't have said anything.
Oh, well, then I
Flows
just care
on.
then.
Is it
doesn't
on
matter.
to? Flows
So-
on to?
It's a lot.
It's minor, but I had to fine tune my skills because Joe beat me out. So, anyway. Other than that, I found nothing.
Okay.
So we're taking approval of June 28, 2021.
Move their approval as noted, the noted amendment.
I'll support it.
One second, I'll get Mr. Bunce in there now.
Yep.
Bauman,
Yes.
Bent,
Yes.
Bunce,
Yes.
Dilkins,
Yes.
Putman,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
and Bosher.
Yes.
We have no public hearings this evening. We do have new business this evening. We have a plotted lot split for Mr. William J. Donnelly Jr. and Faye E. Donnelly Trust at 2233 Sunnyside Drive, Cadillac, Michigan, 49601. Having read that, is Mr. Coy taking it?
It's gonna be me. Sean? Yeah. Page 2 right there.
Good evening, everyone. Long time,
Very
long time. Well, what we have here, we've actually had quite a few of these in the last few months. But our ordinance basically reads that if you have properties that someone wants to split, land division or a lot split, if it's in a platted area, it needs to come before you for approval. Some are administratively approved, but it clearly says platted needs your approval. So we bring it to you. The lot, I think a lot of you are very familiar with. A lot of environmental contamination years ago. Essentially, there's a new home there. Their family cottage was literally torn down because of contamination under it. But there's a new home there. The lot is especially large. And what Mr. Donnelly wishes to do is create 2 lots, 1 new lot. The home will be on its own separate lot. And it is in a TS2 zone district. In the TS2 zone district, the minimum lot size is 100-foot wide and 10,000 square feet in total size. This lot, when you look at the survey and the description of the parcels after the split, the new parcel does meet the 100-foot wide. It's actually 27,000 feet in total size, so it exceeds the minimum standard. So we bring it before you. Again, the section 20-2B in our ordinance reads, all plats, land divisions, lot splits, subdivisions, and site condominiums must comply with the requirements of the chapter as well as other applicable laws and ordinances. This request and application meets all of those minimum standards completely. It's completely within what is allowed, and nothing out of the ordinary there. Essentially, all I'm asking for is a motion to approve the lot split land division at 2233 Sunnyside Drive, which is in the Sunnyside Park plat. Both parcels meet the minimum size and width standards which are in our zoning ordinance. That's it in a nutshell. Do you have any questions for me?
That'll still remain in the tourist.
TS2, no
TS2,
zoning
okay.
change.
Just so I'm on the survey here is, so the new parcel A is lot 7, 6, 27, and 26, is that right?
Yes,
Whole.
yes. The next page has the complete remainder parcel description and the new parcel description. If you go one, just scroll down one, yeah. So this was all done by LCM Surveying and
Luckily,
Engineering.
I'm a lawyer, I don't even know what most of that means, so.
Okay. All I know is when you read them, you start backwards, I understand. But,
But the key, it's all the stuff to the east, right? It's not,
yes, yes.
right.
And if I'm not mistaken, there are homes to the east of it. So it essentially is, it's a TS2, but you don't have to go very far east, and it's zoned residential.
So I take it that nice cottage isn't yours, Mr. Brown?
It's a house.
The house?
It is.
And it is ours.
Oh, it is yours?
Yeah. It is ours.
Oh. It looks very nice.
Thank you. I was listening to it by a lot of people, and I don't take claim to too much.
Is the contamination issue handled? I mean, by what you read, that it was being monitored yet? Or what?
My understanding is, I think there are some monitor markers near the water.
Now, Eagle has closed the project for Marathon Oil after probably 20 years, and that happened before we started building. If they closed site, they're satisfied. There's a restrictive covenant running with land for the property, or most of this property. Some of this property. Property on the east side doesn't have the restrictive covenant. What does that mean?
No, so the east side that you're looking to separate, it wasn't affected by contamination then?
Yeah, it's far enough away
Huh?
from that. Not 100%. The 20 feet that we're getting off of lot, I think it's 8, is covered by the restricted covenant, but not the west 80 feet.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Coy? Or Mr. Donnelly, either one?
I'd make a motion as requested by staff to approve the lot split as requested by the applicant.
I'll second it.
Mr. Hunt?
Bauman,
Yes.
Filkins,
Yes.
Bosher,
Yes.
Bunce,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Bent,
Yes.
and Putman.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Oh, I see now, Joe wanted to get into the something.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.
Okay, old business. Zoning ordinance amendment regarding temporary use signs. Having read that, there was something new sent to us, but I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Wallace. This is his.
Thank you. At our last meeting, we held a public hearing on a proposed ordinance amendment dealing with temporary use signs. As you may recall, the reason for that was to come into compliance with a Supreme Court decision which indicated that we had to be content neutral in our sign regulations. The other reason that we were doing this is that we did not have solid wording in our existing ordinance governing the size and the number of temporary signs that could be placed on particularly residential properties. And so this was an attempt to come into compliance with Supreme Court ruling and also to solve the problem that we had with insufficient regulations regarding signs. At our last meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion whether the draft that the attorney firm drew up was too restrictive in the way of allowing for signs. Since that time, I took the time to go through a number of other communities' ordinances that were done recently and more in compliance with being content neutral. And what I found was that the typical cap on temporary signs was primarily being set at about 14 feet. 14 square feet total for all the signs. Now, how many you can do might change depending on the size of sign you allow. Our tradition here has been to assume a standard size of 4 square feet. We feel that the 4 square feet accommodates standard real estate signs, accommodates standard political signs, garage sale signs, and so forth. So essentially, the revised draft that you have before you tonight essentially doubled the amount of signs that could be permitted on a residential property, going from 2 to 4. We made a couple other modest changes too. As you look on the Schedule D, we lowered the sign height maximum in the commercial district to 14 feet from 15, not a big change, and also indicated that it should not exceed wall height. If the wall height isn't quite 14 feet, we didn't want the signs going above the roof line. Wanted to be a little bit more clear on off-premise signs. Essentially, for commercial, they are prohibited, and we listed prohibited under residential with the exception of footnote 2. They're just not permitted outright, but they're permitted if you have the permission of the owner. So say you want to, you live mid-block and you want to do a garage sale sign, and you go down to the corner property owner and get permission, their permission to locate a sign on their personal property. That would be a possibility, which is currently not a possibility right now. Right now, the only option really is to post in the right-of-way, which technically is not legal. And so I guess this does open up a legal way to actually post some temporary signage. We eliminated E, primarily because we don't believe that the signs that would be involved in this traditionally or historically have caused any kind of vehicular traffic problems. Usually the traffic flow to garage sales, and well, you don't get traffic flow from political signs, but it has not been until the level where we've encountered trouble from a traffic operations standpoint. So that one was eliminated. And we also indicated that you would be allowed to have the 4 square feet in area per sign. So essentially what we allow then on residential property is up to 16 square feet of signage on temporary signs, which if you look at kind of the average of the other ordinances we looked at, would be about 2 square feet above what other people were doing. And, you know, it's been my experience. Right now, we do not have any restrictions on number and size. And as I drive through the community, you know, in the high 90%, 98% of people currently with no restrictions have no signs on their lawn. And I haven't calculated the percentage of people with one sign on their lawn, but it would be a relatively small percent. And the people with 2 or more would almost be negligible in terms of percentage. So I think the history is that in this whole category of temporary signs, which includes political signs, garage sale signs, open house signs, there in general has not been a demand expressed by people actually acting out on that to grant more signs than what this proposed ordinance amendment is proposing. And so for that reason, I think allowing up to 4 signs, I think is a reasonable level. It also addresses what we know we in fact had a problem with, which was someone going well above the 4 signs, and then that causing a public concern from a number of people that that signage was becoming a concern for a number of reasons, but it was a blighting influence. And I guess you can put yourself on either side of a political aisle. If the sign was on either side, the other side is not going to be particularly appreciative of that signage. But nonetheless, that's a different matter, and we can't regulate what goes on those signs. But we can regulate size and number and placement. And so that's essentially what this ordinance attempts to do. And it also has some provision for the timing of some of the temporary signs to come down, say following an election. If there's any questions or discussion, I'd be happy to entertain thoughts. I did issue a memo on this probably a few weeks ago, and sent that out to everyone. And I have that memo available if you wanted to refer to it.
I do have a question. Myself, for example, I have, quote, tree lawn, so say on like Holly Road, they don't really have tree lawn there, that's their front yard, goes up to the street, but, so I have a sidewalk and then tree lawn. Are signs permitted in city tree lawn?
No, they're not.
Okay. Reason I ask that is because on my corner part of tree lawn, I have a telephone pole that is a constant billboard for people that never remove anything, is the reason I'm asking.
Well, that has been a historic problem. Posting of these garage sale signs in the right-of-way, is not prevented, but it's been done for so long and so frequently. To try to address that would probably cause a fair amount of pushback. We have taken a position, particularly on Mitchell, where there's a lot more potential for traffic conflicts and heavy traffic, that it could be more of a factor. We've stepped up enforcement on taking those signs down on Mitchell Street and some other high high-traffic intersections. But it's certainly something that we don't have full control over, but we are trying to address some of the worst of what we see happening. And the other reason it's a problem is people don't always pay attention to what they're trying to mount their signs on. Sometimes they will try to mount their signs on our decorative lighting poles in the downtown, and it'll actually pull off some of the paint or coating on the poles, and then that necessitates the city getting involved and probably having to paint or recoat the poles on a more frequent basis because people are posting these signs illegally on those sites. So, yeah, that is an issue.
Where do flags fall into this category? Whether they're flags on a house or in the yard, regardless of what sort of flag, where do they fall under this?
Good question.
Probably a good question. We've not traditionally dealt with trying to regulate the American flag. Other times, people could, I imagine, try to go with flags of a different sort for commercial purposes. In the end, what will probably control whether it applies to this is our definition of sign. And we did not alter. I have to check what our current definition of sign is. Sometimes the definition is more a traditional definition. Other times people have advanced it to say that it means anything that's meant to attract attention, which then flags could fall under. And so if we wanted to look at that, that would certainly be something that we could look at.
So that is a great question, and I can advise that I did speak with the city attorney earlier this month about flags, especially since we do have a couple flying in town with profanities and whatnot on them. Basically, he sent me a couple of articles that showed how other communities across the country are dealing with this very same issue, and you can't limit the speech. So it is allowed. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be lawsuits or other fights or challenges, but as of right now, the trend is that it would be limiting speech, and that we can't be in the business of limiting speech, even if it's unfortunately profane speech that's out there. So.
So it sort of seems to me that's sort of up to the community itself, like that sign that's right across the street from my house. I find it offensive. They can go talk to the neighbor and say, I don't like this. That's pretty much where it's at. Yeah, okay.
Mr. Coy?
Flags in our ordinance are, they're addressed, but not in the temporary sign section of the ordinance. And there are some specifics with that. One has to do with it's accompanied by an American flag, for example. And I can actually, while you folks discuss it, I can go look it up, print that little section. It's very short, and I can read it to you. It's addressed, but just not in the temporary sign part of the ordinance.
Okay, so it is addressed,
Well,
but,
I mean, it could be used for the same purpose, but yeah, I could see that.
okay. Mr. Coy will retrieve that. Any other questions maybe for Mr. Wallace? Will Mr. Coy's doing that?
I do have one other. How do you determine the conclusion of an event? I mean, I can understand, an open house.
Well, usually they're
Or
self-described.
yard sales.
Open house usually gives the hours, the election, there's an election date. So in most cases, there would be a prescribed termination point.
Yeah, that's what I see,
But is there? There's an election tomorrow. When do those signs have to come off? Is there a date or a time frame that they have to be removed?
This is the 7
7
days.
days.
7 days? Okay, that's what I'm asking. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I question here, and I don't remember from from last meeting, I don't have that in front of us. What was the number of signs per parcel that we talked about last month? What is it now?
we
Or is
went
it,
from two
was
to
it undefined?
It was undefined.
We went from 2 to 4.
Okay,
We doubled it.
okay. that's
And
what I
you
thought.
did have an idea about
Your idea
the
on
size of
what
the
size
property,
was a good
you
idea
said,
too, but-
would determine,
Well, when you look at,
Yeah.
I can think of a particular place where there's about 7 beautifully handcrafted cardboard signs, but they're not 10 feet apart.
right,
And
yeah.
I'm guessing it's a 50-foot lot, so
Okay.
if that was enforced the way it is, it would have eliminated that right out of the,
Right, and the case that we've been concerned about, this would probably cut in half the amount of signs that were on that property. And the other reason why going with numbers, it's a timing issue. Everything that we put into code that requires more staff time becomes problematic in a cumulative nature, and it's much easier to go out and count and say there's 5 or there's 4 or whatever that number is. It's not that we can't do the other, but from enforcement purposes, we are extremely limited on what we can do from a staff perspective.
Otherwise, you'd be out there with a tape measure.
Yeah, right. That's what they've been doing.
It almost gets you to the same point, not perfectly, but it pretty much gets you to the same point.
Next question, how do we get this out to the masses so they know what's legal and what's not legal?
Sure, chime in, Marcus.
This is a preliminary step pending where Planning Commission takes this item tonight. If you essentially ratify the recommendation and you move it forward, it then goes to City Council. When it gets to City Council then has to officially schedule a public hearing. So that'll be something that City Council does over the course of 2 meetings. I don't know for certain, but I do believe that just because of the nature of this, when it does get to City Council, it'll be a little bit more prolific. The media are going to glob onto it right away because they tend to go to all of the City Council meetings. Plus, we can certainly do a little more advertising when we have that public hearing as well, just to make sure that people are aware of it, or after, the changes go into effect. And regarding the changes going into effect, take whatever the date is that the public hearing occurs, assume for just a moment that the City Council then ratifies those changes on that date. The cooling off period is 20 days forward. So, this isn't by any means a fast-tracked type process. This takes time for it to happen. So as we're sitting here, this afternoon at the end of July, at the earliest, you're talking about, the first Monday of August, it's introduced to City Council. The third Monday of August, there's a public hearing. And then a month later, it then becomes enforceable. So you're talking September at the earliest before any of this is something we can do anything with. So.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, I have what I just mentioned. It's one sentence if you would like me to read it to you.
Sure.
In our sign ordinance, again, not under temporary signs, but there is a section under 46-664, 1-whatever 2, under exempted signs. Exempt, okay? Flags bearing the official designation of a non-commercial organization and up to 1 free waving commercial flag with a maximum area of 20 square feet when displayed with an American flag. Lengthy sentence, but again, it is not in the section under temporary signs. So they could be put up, my opinion, and maybe left up.
Thank you for that.
That's just my opinion, but that's how it reads.
Any other questions for staff or Okay. Entertain a motion to forward this to council.
So moved.
Mr. Gregg? So, as what John has corrected, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll second it.
Mr. Fent?
There you go. That's good.
Bauman,
No.
Wilkins,
Yes.
Bosher,
Yes.
Bunce,
Yes.
Gregg,
Yes.
Bent,
Yes.
Putman.
Yes. Thank you, Abby. All right, what do we got? Board member comments tonight. Hope it's warm enough for everybody, just me. but,
Plenty.
Nobody else? Okay.
Just glad to be back.
There,
Yeah.
I'm really happy.
Honestly, I'd like to see you
everybody.
guys.
Good to see ya.
And I
I wouldn't let show my picture on
And
there.
I couldn't see you. All
I
had
didn't,
was
I
a
didn't want you
square
guys to
at the
give me
time.
COVID, so I didn't let you see my picture. I hate those
And
things.
in my defense, the reason, see, when I'm looking at squares, it lights up when somebody speaks. I didn't have a square tonight to know that Mr. Bosher spoke first, so that's my defense. All right.
We're gonna get little light bulbs over the top of
Light
it.
bulbs. Any communications, staff?
No communications.
Having no public, I see no public comments. There being no other business, and wow, we're out of here.
I got two unofficial. One's the next mayoral election.
This fall.